I didn't want to get paid by the hour. I realized early on that this was a terrible way to make a living. I didn't want to have a stupid boss. I didn't want for anyone to tell me where and when I need to be and what to do. I wanted something that allowed my creativity to shine, that allowed me to maybe solve problems and challenges. Obviously, I mean, I have a junior engineering degree, so I love to solve problems.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Book More Show. It's Stuart Bell here, joined today by Igor Kheifets. Igor, how's it going, buddy?
Great. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to share this story as well. It's one of those things where sometimes I'm talking to people who I know quite well. Sometimes it's one of the first calls. Sometimes it's clients who I've seen go through the process but didn't have any reason to chat. And that falls into our camp. And the connection is actually even funnier than that because I saw the book pass through a couple of years ago now. And in fact, it's still on the, we always order a copy to the office. So we've still got a copy on one of the desks in the front part of the office. So every time I'm down there, because of the dimensions of yours is a 6x9. So it's dimensionally looks a little bit different from the other ones we've got. So every time I'm down there, I see it on the shelf. But we hadn't connected, and I actually saw the Instagram ad that you're currently running, and that prompted me to reach out. So it's always funny the circle, but I'm really excited to share what you're doing with people because it's such a great crossover with the audience. Why don't we start by giving people a little bit of a background on you, your journey, what it is that you do, then we can jump into things from there.
So I'm like a product of the system. I grew up in a family full of teachers. My grandmother was a school principal. My grandfather was a school teacher. My mom was a music teacher, and my dad was a mechanical engineer. So growing up, I've got one message and one message only, and that's like study hard, go to school, study hard, get good grades, and everything's going to be okay. However, that didn't seem to pan out the way I was promised. Um, I was born in Ukraine. And then when I turned 12, just before I turned 12, actually, we moved to Israel. And my family had to start over because things in Ukraine were really getting bad. It was about the year 2000. So when we moved to Israel, it was a new beginning, but also lots and lots of challenges. So a new language, new culture, and my parents, they couldn't really find themselves. But to make matters worse, my dad suffered a heart attack about 6 months after
Oh,
we
right.
immigrated, and he went into a double bypass. So he couldn't really find, or the jobs he could find, he couldn't stick to them very long. And as a result, we pretty much were going hand to mouth every single month. In Israel, it's actually pretty common to be in overdraft with your bank. So our overdraft was growing from 3,000 to 5,000 to 10,000. Eventually, at one point, it actually hit 30,000 overdraft.
Right.
Um, which means we were living in debt. We were constantly in debt, and the bank kept on making more and more interest. And anytime a paycheck would come in, it would cover the debt a little bit, so it would go from minus 30 grand to minus 26. But then over the course of
Yeah.
the month, it would
Just
slide
back
back
again.
down. Yeah. So basically, let me just mute my people keep calling me today. So basically, what ended up happening. Um, my parents said, we want you to get a good education, but we can't afford it. So we're gonna enlist you in the Israeli Air Force Academy. So it was an Air Force Academy where you enroll as a cadet when you're 14, and then you're studying there while wearing a full-on uniform, and they train you
Right.
like a soldier until you graduate. But you graduate with a great diploma, and then companies would want to hire you, which is literally the case in Israel because Israel has a huge military industrial complex. It has a great Silicon Valley, as you know, and lots of opportunities there. So I did as I was told. Again, I put on the uniform. I marched to the tune of my superior. I studied well, and I graduated the academy with flying colors, straight A student. So I became a junior engineer in electronics, and I was just about to enlist in the military because I now owed the Israeli government 4 years of military service because of my education, because they subsidized partially my
Right.
education. My parents only paid roughly $500 a year for my education. The rest was subsidized by the government. And so when I enlisted, I started meeting all the guys that graduated years before me, which means these are the people who were on the same path that I was, but they were like a few years.
Love it. A few steps ahead. Right.
Yeah, so I almost like had a glimpse into the future, and I didn't like what I saw. They were
Right.
still living with their parents years later. They were still saving up for a used, beat down car like a Fiat or a Chevy Cruze or something like that. They didn't have a place of their own. They were pretty much still dancing to the tune of their superior. So their superior wanted to see them on a Saturday morning. They have to put on the uniform and march and
Right.
go to the base.
Being there.
So it didn't really sit well with me, and it didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand what exactly was I putting up with, so much sacrifice for. There was no money, fame, there was nothing that I could really cling to and say, you know what, this is it. It's worth the struggle. So I decided to exit that path or that industry, if you will, and I rebelled against everything that I've known at the time, against my parents, against the establishment. I went AWOL with my unit. I stopped. They were looking
Oh,
at
so
one
literally
point.
you pulled the
I
plug on
went
it
a
and
literally, yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay.
At one point, MPs showed up at my doorstep, put handcuffs on me,
Right.
and took me to an army prison where I spent 24 hours. Then I went into like a courtroom where some colonel or whatever, told me that, look, we're gonna forgive you this time, but you need to
Right.
change.
Get
Yeah, you
together.
need to
Yeah,
straighten
yeah.
up. Get it together, Igor. And of course they forgave me because I was straight A student. I was already trained for the Air Force. I was a valuable
Right.
unit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That they
yeah.
invested a lot in me. So I went back, and this time I said, you know what, I'm still gonna get out. This time though, I'm gonna get out through the system. And so I actually had a friend who graduated with me, my classmate, David. And David got out. He figured out a way. So it was my very first mentoring experience. He actually mentored me on exactly what to say, what to do, where to go, and how to behave in order to get discharged from the service, which I did following 8 months or so it took me.
Okay.
And the moment I stepped out of the military, I already had my mindset and what I wanted to do, because years prior, I bumped into the internet marketing industry. I've discovered network marketing. I discovered information marketing. I've actually became a customer for an information marketing business in the dating space. So this company, you might have heard of it. It's called Double Your Dating.
Yeah,
Back in
yeah.
the day, David
Heard of this
D'Angelo, aka Aben Pagan, aka
Yeah.
David D'Angelo, the guys like Mystery and all these, and Craig Clemens and all the other guys, they were teaching how to date and how to pick up women. Now, I never really turned into a pickup artist or anything. My body count is, I mean, it's not negative, but it's like really low. However, I've learned enough skills, like I've acquired a skill set to be able to actually talk to women, which for me was a big deal. And I ended up finding my future wife, to whom I'm married today. So basically, that industry intrigued me because I've always liked the internet. I've always realized it had the potential. I've used it a lot for pretty much everything. I was part of the generation that was growing up and, with a dial-up modem and,
Right.
and all of that stuff. So to me, the idea of not having to commute anywhere, not having to answer to a boss, and being able to become an entrepreneur, but not having any business education, capital, or any sense of what sort of business I wanted to start, or any skill set as far as like selling or marketing or anything else, I was really hooked on it because, studying in the academy, for example, I commuted about 3 hours a day
Right.
to and from the academy because it was located in a different town. So I
Yeah.
had to take a cross town bus and then another one inner city bus just to get there. And then obviously going back home is the same thing, but this time with traffic. So,
Right.
so to me, that
It
seemed like
gives
a
you a
great
good
idea.
feeling for what you don't want to do.
Absolutely. I knew, yeah, I had no idea what I was going to do, but I had, very precise idea of what I wasn't willing to put up with. And commuting was definitely one of those. And then, having a stupid boss was obviously one of those too, and having a limited income. So I wanted to break the link between my time and my income. I didn't want to get paid by the hour. I realized early on that this was a terrible way to make a living. I didn't want to have a stupid boss. I didn't want for anyone to tell me where and when I need to be and what to do. I wanted something that allowed my creativity to shine, that allowed me to maybe solve problems and challenges. Obviously, I mean, I have a junior engineering degree, so I love to solve problems. I was very curious. I always loved to learn. And did I mention I hate commuting? I think I mentioned that. So I stumbled into this amazing industry that had like a gazillion different ways you could make money. But eventually, the way I made money was first off through promoting affiliate products, so promoting other people's products and getting paid a commission. But I specifically did it with an email list, which became the platform and the foundation to pretty much everything that I've done since. And it pretty much bulletproofed my income and allowed me to continuously grow and grow and grow and solidify what I was doing. And to this day, I still have income streams I've built this way from like many, many years ago that continue to pay me every single month. So that is why I ended up writing a book about it. And that is why I ended up working with your company to help me do that.
The idea of building the email list and the safety that that brings with it, because it's an asset that you own and you can continue to develop that relationship over a number of years. I think the majority of people who we work with aren't necessarily in the affiliate space, but everyone is in the email space. And when we think about the idea of conversation starting books versus traditional books, the majority of the purpose, if not all the purpose, is either to build the email list or to further engage the people on those lists. So it's such a clear, I almost wish that people could have more of a understanding of that history and background that you went through in the early days of the internet, the likes of Craig and Eben and Dean and Frank and Ed and all of these guys who were there in the very early days. Yes, affiliate marketing is it was a means to an end for a lot of people, but those fundamental skills, those foundational skills, that still applies in just the same way, whether the end product is someone else and you're affiliate, or whether it's your product or service and you're trying to build something where you've got a very close relationship and investment with the people. That idea of building the list and then keeping it engaged over a period of time, did you start with that in mind, or did it start off a little bit more just, hey, I need some names on a list in order to put an affiliate product in front of them? Did you have the longer term view right from the start, or did it kind of morph and develop into that?
Yeah, I've definitely I haven't been like a long term thinking kind of guy at the time. These days I think a lot deeper about things, of course, but I'm much older and I want to think I'm wiser. But
Right.
back in the day, I'm just looking to make some money, man. And to be frank with you, I've tried it all. Like if you look me up and if you can dig deep enough, you'll find I've done some black hat stuff. I've done pretty much every which way there was to try and make money. I've tried it. Some ways succeeded, some ways didn't, but nothing really stuck. When I got into list building, it was only after I realized that so as an affiliate, there's really two ways to make money. Either you run ads or create content and you send people directly to an affiliate program, in which case you kind of start over every day. So if I've
Right.
got an ad linking to an affiliate offer and I'm converting, and let's say that I'm like getting positive ROI, which these days is very difficult to do, by the way, nearly impossible, I'd even say. The moment my ad account gets shut down, my ad creative stops working, the affiliate program, gets discontinued or commission, structure changes. Um, I'm done. I'm like, I don't have an asset.
Right.
And I've always been risk averse. Could be because I'm Jewish, could be because I've witnessed my family go through periods of, feast and famine, my dad losing income, my dad going through sickness and illness that prevented him from being a breadwinner. Like I know what it's like to literally not know where is the money coming from so we can buy food tomorrow. Like
Yeah.
that was like a part of my life growing up. So I was always, trying to build something that would stick. And one of the biggest frustrations, online is that most things that get sold to you as a way to make money, they're fads.
Right.
They're fads. They work today, they're gone tomorrow. 10 years ago, everyone's talking about Facebook ads. 8 years ago, everyone's talking about blogging. 6 years ago, everyone's talking about Amazon drop shipping. 4 years ago, everybody's talking about YouTube. 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago now, everyone's talking about AI. So
Yeah.
there's going to be something else tomorrow. But as an affiliate marketer, I obviously kept tabs on all the different people who were, let's call them super affiliates, people who are making big money with affiliate marketing. And, it's really, it's really hard not to notice them because their names are always on leaderboards. If there's an
Yeah.
affiliate launch going on, you'd always see the same names on the boards. And I was like, these people must be doing something right. I mean, it's not like
There's
they're
a
winning
sign
one
here.
competition. Yeah, they're winning 12 competitions a year. And if they're not winning, they're in the top 5 or top 10 or top 20. And what I've concluded is that they all mail their lists because anytime there was a new product launch going on, I would get like 20 different emails from 20 different people. And then the same names would appear on different leaderboards. So I put two and two together and I said, maybe I needed to build a list. So that's how that's what kind of sold me on the concept. Now, that was enough to get me in, but later, as I've further developed and started actually making money and, made my own progress and made a splash with it, more evidence presented itself to then reaffirm my belief. And these days, I can sit here and for the next 3 hours bring you so many different examples as to why email is by far the most effective weapon when it comes to online marketing media, how it's producing the highest ROI, how it's superior to social media, how it's the only media you actually control as a business owner because, if Trump could get shut down on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and you can too. Right? How many
Yeah.
people got shadow banned? How many people lost ad accounts? The only thing that you actually control and have in your hands is your list. In fact, I'd even go as far as saying your product is not as powerful as your list because your product can be easily copied. Your sales copy can be easily copied, but
Right. That's true.
the list and the relationship you have with it, it cannot be copied, it cannot be stolen from you. And even if you lose your email sending software, account, or your mailing IP gets blacklisted, it's only a matter of time before you take the same records, you communicate with them, and you build yourself back up. So if tomorrow I had to start over and you allowed me to pick just one asset in my entire unit, my entire business, that I could take with me, it'd be my list. It wouldn't be my team. It wouldn't be my products. It wouldn't be my graphics. It wouldn't be my ads or creatives or anything. It will actually be just the people, the email addresses on my email list. If I could keep those, I'd be back making 6 figures before the end of the week. I'd be back making 7 figures in 2 months.
It's such an interesting point because we see so many businesses or talk to so many businesses, maybe less so now, although I'm not entirely sure, um, where they've been in business for a number of years. They've got records of clients, but have zero records of leads, even if they've collected them over the years. Still talk to people who have got records on paper, still talk to people who share stuff, but the only emails they've got are maybe in their Outlook or their Exchange system. It's with all of the technology that's around today, I think it's now somewhat easier for people to collect leads. It's not quite such a burden that it was before, but still the number of people who don't or do it at a superficial level or collect but then never stay in touch with people, it's such an opportunity that's getting older and older every day. And if people just did a small amount towards it, it would be that incrementally bigger step every time. Why don't we share the book idea then? Because the book is specifically around email and that list building and the power that's in there. Obviously, the story in the background is why you wanted to share it, because it's got such a profound impact on what you've done. But what was the thinking behind kind of what ideas to include, and the premise, what you're really trying to share with people as much as possible?
So we're talking about this book that eventually I called List Building and Lifestyle Confessions of an Email Millionaire. And actually, this title, believe it or not, is a winning subject line split test.
Ah,
So
interesting.
yeah, just kind of FYI, in case anyone listening is still trying to decide what how to call their book. This is how you can know. Like if the subject line is getting more opens, then use it as your book title because it's probably going to get more attention on the bookshelf.
Yeah.
But the idea for the book came as a result of, well, first off, I always knew I had a book in me. That's for sure. Because having been, a big student of personal development, and I mean, having read as many books as I have, and recognize that books are the source of knowledge that it's easily available to you. It's very cheap, so it's probably the best, dollar for dollar mentoring you can ever get in any topic. And I continue to read books today. Obviously, like right now, I'm reading a series of books on back pain because that's like the issue I'm dealing with for the last few years, and kind of trying to better understand, the structure, the pelvis, the different exercises, lifestyle changes I need to make, and all that stuff. It comes as a result of someone else's experience that's in a book. So I always wanted to publish a book. I never knew how to do it. And to be frank with you, I've always procrastinated about writing it because I didn't feel like who am I to publish a book? And
Right.
I
Okay.
think I think my thinking was backwards because, you look at the likes of Tony Robbins, Robin Sharma, Dean Graziosi, or a number of other experts, doesn't matter who they are. They all have books. Some of them have 20 books, 30 books, 40 books, 50 books. Guys like Dan Kennedy, who I'm a big, big, big fan of, he's got like a gazillion books, half of which he didn't even write. And I've always thought that to write a book, you need to be a somebody. But the reality is, you become somebody after you've published a book.
Yeah.
By
Right.
publishing a book, you go from being nobody or a guy with a service or a guy with a skill to being an author. So that in itself transitions you from here's all the mortals, here's all the other
Yeah.
plumbers in your area, and you're a plumber who actually published the book. So you're an author. And that puts you, socially speaking, that puts you in a different class. Now, if you can also sell lots of copies of your book, then you're now a best-selling author, and that's like the best. Because if you're a best-selling author, automatically everything you say and do becomes impressive, becomes legitimate, becomes yeah, attractive. And this is why celebrities get paid lots of money to just show up at a club and drink some vodka because they're celebrities. So in your niche market, publishing a book and selling lots of copies of that book makes you like important. People listen
It's
to you. People take you seriously.
that credibility and authority that comes from having it. It still surprises me that just because you've got these exact same words are printed on a dead tree, those same words in this format are so much more credible than the exact same words in a YouTube video, on a blog post, in an article. Even the electronic version of it, it still carries a lot of that weight. And just as you said, trying to differentiate yourself in your own niche, it's not like you're trying to compete with Tony Robbins. It's that you as a plumber are trying to compete with Bob, the other plumber, down the road. And to have that thing that separates in something that's relatively straightforward to create, particularly using the process that we've got, we're trying to streamline that as much as possible. But break away from the confidence thing, as you said, and understand that your knowledge, you don't have to be a celebrity in order to write, particularly when we're dealing with real world businesses. The knowledge that you've got from being in business for any time more than a year, you've got so much helpful stuff in your head that the reader would be delighted to have that understanding. It really shouldn't, that confidence or credibility gap comes afterwards. It doesn't have to come before in order to do something.
Yeah. And so To me, there was also practical, besides the authority that will come with the book, there was a practical application. And that is, people ask me what I do all the time. People ask me to teach them what I do all the time. So when you have to tell the same story and teach the same stuff over and over again, at some point, you ask yourself, is there a better way to just deliver the
Right.
message? Because I'm like a broken record saying the same thing over and over again, just the people change. So you put it in a book, and next time somebody asks you what you do or if you can teach me, you're like, yeah, here's my book. Go buy the book and read the book. At the very least, it sets great groundwork, great foundation for a discussion later. Now, from a business standpoint, having a book made a lot of sense because it's another way to generate leads. It's a way to win authority with people. And it's a way to create like a new pathway or doorway into my world, which is exactly what I've done with that book. It became one of my funnels. So I don't know if the audience is familiar with the word, but I'm assuming they are.
Yeah, yeah.
So it became one of the funnels, and for several years now, it's been one of the go-to funnels in my universe that continues to bring high quality clients.
I think as well, like you said, there's so many options to use it as the jumping off point to get access into your world. So meeting people, cold traffic, email list, landing pages, podcast appearances, anytime where you get the opportunity for people to say, tell me more, that tell me more can be answered within a book that starts to deliver value and move the conversation down a path that you want the conversation to go down. Obviously, there's a structure and a narrative to the book that leads people from a question at the beginning to a next step at the end. So the job of work that it does of predisposing people to take that next step, there's just so many positives for it in that use case where you want to move people from tell me more to let's do business with each other.
Yeah, I think if we can sum it all up in one sentence, your book is just a great business card. When somebody sticks you a business card at a seminar, you just put it in your back pocket and throw it in the trash later. If somebody ships you a copy of their book, that
Right.
that that tells a different story, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, the physical copies and the gift giving element of it to amplify that beginning part of the conversation. It's one of the use cases that I love most when I hear people saying that they had a list of the 10 people that they'd really been trying to get in touch with, and the book was the door opener, sent a copy, followed up with them, made it personal, made a connection between you, the business owner, the author, and them and what their challenges are. It just accelerates that conversation so much faster than anything else I can think of. Because even things like gift giving and the kind of, you talked about Dan Kennedy before, the kind of bulky mail type, get past the gatekeeper approach. I mean, all of those things have some degree of effect, but there's nothing as personal. I mean, there is it's crazy because we always say the book isn't the product, the conversation's the product. But as far as the book goes, there is a reverence still around books. Don't drop books on the floor, don't crease them and bend them, put them on the shelf, like take care of these things. What else could you send to someone without getting crazy on the budget? But what else could you send to someone that would have the same amount of care taken around it than a book? And then if it's
Well,
your book,
there's an
and
argument
including
to be
that.
made about that. For example, one of my joint venture partners, last month, I've sent him a set of whiskey glasses, and but that's because I knew he likes whiskey, and
Right,
very pleased with that.
right,
However, like you said, like a book is just a great door opener, especially if you're trying to land more appearances, like podcasts and whatnot. You know, they might want to interview you if you have a skill or something interesting to say, but they will most definitely like to interview with you if you are an author, or especially big author, or at least sold like a few thousand copies of your book, or maybe your book caught their attention for whatever reason. You see it all the time. And there's also the practical application once you've landed the interview, to actually give away a copy of your book to the people in the audience. So if you're making a speech at a seminar, you're making a web appearance, a summit, a book is just a great way to establish that relationship and say, hey, if you liked to talk today, go check out the book, grab it here, and you send them to a page where they can, get the book. And of course, we mentioned this earlier. For me, everything that I do, no exception, like every move that I make, is the first goal is to generate a list, to
Right.
get that subscriber, right? So with the book, I get the email address. Obviously, unless they buy it on Amazon. If they buy it on Amazon, I get nothing. But I'm getting the email address, the physical address, the telephone number. I get a lot of information about my customer, which allows me to then establish a relationship with them, which is why, when I do advertise my book, I never send people to buy it on Amazon. I
Yeah.
send them to buy it on my website, because even though I'm pretty sure that if more people knew about my book on Amazon, it would benefit me in terms of exposure and publicity. It's only when they buy it through my website, and actually my website, they'll get it for free. They'll just chip in on shipping and handling. This is when I'm going to quote unquote get a customer,
Yeah.
because that's the real
That's
purpose.
right. Then that's our exact approach as well. It's so much more about the opportunity to start the conversation with someone, which is capturing details in order to be able to follow up, rather than sales on Amazon. Because who cares if you'd, I mean, not who cares completely, but relatively speaking, if you could only pick one, you could get someone's name and email address, or you could get another check in the box that would put you to be a bestseller in some subcategory for 5 minutes. The email address is going to be more valuable. You were talking about getting a copy on the website. Do you have a take on the difference between just allowing someone to download the digital copy in exchange for an email address versus a physical copy for name, physical address, and phone number?
Yeah, I always insist on sending the physical copy. However, with it, I'll still email them the digital copy of the book if they don't want to wait until it arrives. And the reason is, even if they don't read my book, if there's a physical copy somewhere in the house, I don't care if it's even if it's in the toilet. It's
Right.
somewhere. They
It's
know it's
somewhere.
there. That gives me credibility points. That gives me authority points. I'm not just some guy.
Right.
I'm a guy they bought a book from, and that's different. When I started, everybody was giving away ebooks. So over time, it sort of got devalued. How many times did you download an ebook and you barely flipped it open? You
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, I'll get to it," and never got to it. With a book, you may get buy the book, not read it. I mean, I'm guilty of that as much as anyone else.
Me
I have
too.
tons of books that the shrink wrap is still on, but I know the name of the author, and the author is elevated in my
Yeah.
universe.
Actually, that's a great point. And something, so we're for simplicity mainly, because the physical fulfilling of stuff is difficult for people to get a handle on. So for simplicity, we're usually talking to people about the digital versions. Now, funnily enough, you said that everyone gave away ebooks and that was devaluing it. Right from the start, we've always told people to never call it an ebook. An ebook is not quite a derogatory term, but it's unnecessarily devaluing giving someone the digital copy of the book, which psychologically positions it different. But to your point, the fact that someone actually physically receives something and that it is there taking up space in the house and it physically exists in their space, there is an extra level of psychological anchoring to that. And someone receiving an email from you, having received a digital copy, is one thing. Someone receiving an email and the book is sat on a shelf somewhere, even if they don't read it, that's something else. So it is an interesting, there is definitely, I agree, an anchoring element to the physical part of it that you don't get in the digital sense. And it might be worth, as we're talking to people, talking a little bit more about, because practically speaking now, fulfilling orders is easier than it used to be years ago.
Yeah, but this
So
was a
it's
big fear of mine, because I had no idea how to physically fulfill. And when I started doing my research, I would reach out to different printing shops and whatnot, and it would scare me. And they would say, "Yeah, we can fulfill at $6.27 per book plus
right,
3 times, 55 cents shipping posting. And if it's outside of Wisconsin, then
right,
it's $3.98." And then they would say something like, "But you have to pre-order 2,000 books."
right,
I'm like, I have no idea if I'm gonna ever sell 2,000 books. You kidding me? What am I
yeah,
supposed to do? So, but that was back in the day. meaning, it was hard and you could go that route, but today you don't have to. I fulfilled my book through Amazon. They have a great I would call it publish on demand service through your author profile. You can log in, send out author copies anytime you want, and you will
Right.
go through the Amazon's distribution network, which is very fast. But you can also use other services. For example, right now we're using a service called lulu.com, and they print, they ship it. I don't touch it. I don't like, I have only one copy of the book here just so I can show it off when I'm getting interviewed like this.
Yeah.
Maybe a few copies for friends and family if I look somewhere behind me, like there's a little cupboard there. But other than that, I don't really have books. Like I don't have a warehouse full of books. You
Right.
used to have that. You no longer have to do that. Now you
I,
print on demand. It's a little bit more expensive to print on demand as opposed to pre-order 2,000 units. So your cost per book goes from like $6 a book to $8 a book or $9 a book. Like in my case, actually over $10, because I choose to print it on a really nice, like with a really nice cover, high quality paper. That's just my preference. But it's still very cheap. Like it's
yeah.
not, it doesn't require millions of dollars. You don't need to rent out a warehouse. You don't need to sacrifice your garage and fill it up with like
Right.
stacks of
Have
books.
a table and a
And it's
roll of
all
stamps.
remote, all automated. You don't have to do anything yourself. It's all fulfilled automatically through established channels that already exist because you're just piggybacking on the same services that thousands of other authors are using right now.
Yeah, it's such a great point, isn't it? It's very difficult to keep abreast of things when you're not involved day to day. So that concern that, I mean, we've spoken to authors that we've worked with who've done books elsewhere, and then they've been locked into buying 1,000 at a time, and then they, the example you used of sat in the garage and doing nothing. So it's difficult to stay ahead of the technologies that changes, but that's definitely not um, things move on, and it to be able to fulfill things where it makes sense that a physical version is going to do a lot more of the heavy lifting than a digital version. There's so many more options now. I wanted to make sure that we get a chance to dive into the ideas behind the book itself and the things that people can the ideas that you kind of sharing. So this approach of the money is in the list and staying in touch with that list and understanding what the opportunities are. If someone's saying, "Hey, Igor, what do you do?" and you point them to the book, what are the kind of things you really hope that they're going to take from it in order to take that next, well, get something for themselves and take that next step with you?
I was creating this. So this book is the third book I've created, meaning that it's the third version of this book that ended up getting published because the first two weren't good enough. The first version of the book that I wrote was over 35,000 words, and it was like a practical, technical manual on doing what I do. I basically took the courses that I teach and put them in a book with
Right,
screenshots and links and everything. And I realized it wasn't good for a book because all the books that I've appreciated, that I've read in my life, books like Never Split the Difference, books like 80/20 Sales and Marketing, Dan Kennedy's books, they weren't necessarily dry teaching practical sort of books. They were story-based, principle-based creations.
right,
And so I had to go and sort of I took the initial manual I created and I actually turned into a digital product that I sold, and I still sell it to this day. Actually, at a price more expensive than the book. But the book, I had to sit down and rewrite it and actually tell my story. Now, for me, it wasn't very difficult to do because by that time I've already done lots and lots of public speaking. So I've appeared on webinars, seminars, podcasts. I have my own podcast under the same name. So I'm used to telling my story, expressing ideas. And so the book is the expression of that. It takes people through my journey and the lessons I learned along the way. And eventually it puts them in a position where either they like the journey and they want to make the same journey, in which case they can dive deeper into my universe through additional resources that are in the book, or they read it and they don't want to dive in and
right.
they just stay on my email list to kind of stay up to date with what I'm up to. But other than that, they don't necessarily take a step forward and escalate further.
Yeah. And it might be that today's not the day for them, but 6 months, 2 years, 5 years down the track, now
Yeah, that's
suddenly
actually
email is
really
more
true.
pressing.
We ran a promotion last week for a program we have for that cost, like, let's put it as high, 5-figure fee. And what's really interesting, I've had lots of people who bought my book 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 2 years ago actually apply. It's like they
Right.
were sitting on the list for a long, long time before they finally decided to put the trigger. I once spoke to a friend of mine who I consider to be one of the best direct response marketers of our time right now, my friend Caleb O'Dowd. And he wrote actually a great book recently and released, which I highly recommend, called Monetization. Um, and so he talks about how the buying cycle, or the buyer's interest, or the client's interest, resets like a clock, like a 24-hour clock. Now, for people, it might be different time frames, could be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 10 years. But you have to imagine it like a clock that basically goes from cold, warm, warmer, hot, red hot, and then cold again. So it's like
Right.
resets every 24, but 24 hours can mean different things to different people. So if somebody ain't ready to transact with you right now, it doesn't mean that 6 months down the road, 3 months down the road, 2 years down the road, they're not going to be ready to pull the trigger. Which is,
Yeah.
again, brings us back to the power of having an email list, because
Yeah.
all this time throughout the last, let's say 4 years, these people were getting emails from me. They were getting promotions from me. They were, being kept up to date with what I'm up to. They were apparently just waiting for the perfect offer that would come in at the perfect time, or would correlate with the perfect time in their life for them to take action.
And that our personal experience is exactly the same. So because our business isn't, we're not plumbers where the pipes are leaking and someone needs it fixing today, writing a book, even from a marketing perspective, there's no every day that passes by is a missed opportunity because it's like a river of possible clients. They're always passing by. You don't get a chance to refish in the same spot again. But it's not like there's a leak in the water's coming in the door. So people can, the thing that they're losing out on by not acting today is opportunity cost, not actual physical cost. So we've got many, many, many people who 5, 10 years later now, because we've been doing this for so long, people on the list for that period of time. I always enjoy telling the story of a good friend of ours, Kenny, who's Kenny McCarthy. He's a realtor up in Boston area, and he purged his list because he's impatient sometimes, and he purged anyone who hadn't. There was no sign of life, so no kind of open signal in the CRM. Purged them off for no good reason whatsoever. And then 6 months later, got a phone call from a guy. He had the voicemail. So when he was down in Florida a couple of years ago and was playing it, he played us the message, and the message read something like, "Hey Kenny, it's Bob here. I'm sorry, I don't know what I've done. I must have done something to get off your list. Anyway, we've been receiving your messages for a few years now. Unfortunately, my sister passed away earlier this year, so we're going to sell her house and our house, and then we're going to look for another house to buy." So this transaction turned into two sales of beachfront homes, like multi-million-dollar listings, each of them, and the purchase of a new home. And if it wasn't for the diligence of this person digging, it gets even funnier because they actually had to phone another realtor in the area to get Kenny's number. So I always laugh because I imagine that story. It's the realtor answers the phone and, "Oh, hi, it's Bob here. I need to sell a couple of my houses." And the realtor says, "Oh, fantastic. How can I help you?" "Well, do you have Kenny's phone number?" Oh, yeah. So
It's
anyway,
like,
if it wasn't
oh,
for
Kenny died.
everyone, yeah,
Oh, he died and I took over. We call them
yeah,
we call them upstream leads, like salmon who swim
right.
upstream to go
Swim and
find.
swim and
Yeah.
swim. Yeah, exactly. But for every one of those, how many wouldn't go through that step? They try, "Oh, who was that guy again?" And then it's just gone. So that long term, you never know when the time is for them. There's no burn and churn on email lists. It's an asset. Dean, I know, likes to talk about kind of like the return on investment and treating building a list rather than a marketing expense, treating it as a capital investment. because there is some future value in that list that's
Yeah.
quantifiable one way.
And if any of the listeners are experiencing the same issue where they don't see the list opening, clicking, then I have a network of people actually who are specialists at email deliverability, email campaigns, who can
Right.
help bring it back to life. So, hit me up.
Yeah.
I'll connect you.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point as well. It's in the weeds, but the technical changes that have happened even this year, I mean, it's pretty dramatic. And if you don't keep up on them, if your software provider doesn't keep up on them, it's not the case anymore that, hey, I've got a list and I assume that every email is going to be received. You actually do have to do some care and maintenance and jump through some technical steps. So yeah, I think actually that's a great point. As people are listening, if it is worth saying, check your delivery system. If you've seen that the deliveries start to fall off, it is a sign that there are some technical steps you can take to kind of reliven that and reach out. That's probably a great point. I just glanced at the clock as we were talking, and every episode I tell people it goes way faster than I always think it does. That's probably a good point to make sure that we can get people connected with you and share where they can find out more. So what's a good place for people to go?
Yeah, you can go to my website. It's igorkheifets.com. Or you can just Google my name. I'm sure a lot of stuff will come up. Or you can also check out my book, List Building Lifestyle Confessions of an Email Millionaire. And this book, you can either get it on Amazon. You can actually get it with Kindle Unlimited for free because it's part of that whole hub. However, I would love for you to go to igorsbook.com and get it there. Shipping and shipping and handling. If you're in the US, it's going to be $10. If you're in the outside of the US, anywhere outside of the US, it's going to be $20. And I will ship you a physical copy of the book. I will give you the digital version of the book, the Audible version, professionally narrated, which you can obviously get this book on Audible if you wanted to as well. And also, in addition to all of that, $3,200 of bonuses that include landing page templates, email training, traffic training, and so on, just to help you build your list better. And again, the reason I'm doing that is because I'm ethically bribing you to get it off of my website so I can put you on my list. Because if you get it on Amazon, unfortunately, they don't share your email address with me. Now, guess why? Because they know how valuable it is. If you ever got emails from Amazon, be like, hey, this is in your cart, but did you know that people who buy that thing also buy all these things? Or you bought this, but goes well with all these things. So
Yeah.
Amazon knows. Amazon emails every day, sends me specific emails with books recommendations, sends me emails with my shopping cart suggestions. Amazon knows better than anyone else that email is the way to go. By the way, when you think about email, if you're still not convinced that email is king, think about it like, if you're doing any real estate transactions, the contract, you sign it in your email. If you're applying for a visa in a different country, your appointment is set through email. Amazon will send you shipping notification via email. It'll send you receipt via email. Anything that's important, anything that's
Yeah, that's the channel that it comes
transactional,
through.
it goes to your email. A government notification, a bill from some company like a utility bill, it all goes to your email. So keep that in mind next time you're thinking that you should be building your TikTok following instead of your.
I mean, the interesting thing going forward as well, as that becomes so much more of a repository of your life. I mean, my first email address was 1996, probably. So what's that, 30, coming up on 30 years of email history, predominantly in the same mailbox. That as a source of your life and your history going forwards, all of the social media interactions you've got disappear. Text messages are difficult to mine. The fact that you use email, or people use email as a repository to go back and find information. If I remember I was talking to someone about a list building book, what was it? Let me search my email. That's the power of being able to deliver your message into that box, both on the long term and the short term. So yeah, I completely agree. There's so much of all of the activities that you could do, making sure that you get the email game down and start the conversations with people through that channel, by far the most valuable. I'll make sure that I put links to the website in the show notes. So as people are listening to it, they can just go to the show notes on the podcast player or on the website and just click straight through. And as you say, the benefits are twofold. There's the bonuses that are going to be specifically useful for people, but also just to get on your list and see what you're sending as a way of kind of modeling behavior and getting inspired to do more of the same. That's where the real return's going to come.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. You'd be surprised. A lot of people spy on me and get on my list specifically for that. Which, I guess it's a form of flattery. And also, I encourage you, if you're an author, go through my book funnel, because
Right.
the actual book purchase is just the start of it. You want to have a full funnel behind it. So check it out. I've put a lot of work into it. So it's nothing about that funnel is accidental.
Right. Actually, that's such a great point. It's the be inspired by good examples of what you see other people do and then be classy about how much you copy it.
Steal like an artist.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, do it enough that you get to the laudits for it and not the criticism. Um, time goes so fast as always. Igor, we'll have to do this again sometime and dive in a little bit deeper. Um, thank you, everyone listening. I'll put links to Igor's book down in the show notes, so definitely recommend clicking through. Igor, again, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it and look forward to catching up on the next one.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.